Hello, students, and welcome to episode 11 of Coach Stroud's What to Read While Quarantined. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about some of my favorite rock and roll books out there, some biographies. But before I do, I want to talk to you a little bit and give a few shout outs to a couple of authors who I've been in contact with since doing some of these reviews. Students, these authors have been very kind to us. They've given us a lot of props for doing these videos, for me sharing their works with you guys, and in hopes that it helps you guys get through this quarantine time. First one is Cameron Rubik. We spoke a few times, and he's a super nice guy. Wonderful man who is very excited about the fact that some of you might be reading his Kill River series. I'm currently finishing off his second book in the series, Kill River 2, and I'll tell you right now, I will do a review in a little bit, but it is better than the first one. I am loving it. Absolutely phenomenal book. Next would be Keelan Patrick Burke. When I covered Sour Candy, he had some very kind words for us as well. Super nice guy. And the last one, Derek Millman with Scream All Night. Now, Mr. Millman has been super kind to us guys, and he is going to be sending us some promotional material to hand out in class once this quarantine finally ends. That's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about that. Thank you to all three of those authors. You guys are amazing, and I really do appreciate you supporting me and supporting my students. It means a lot. All right, so moving into the books. First is kind of a crossover book type thing with sports and rock and roll. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this guy is just a phenomenal author. He is a wrestler. And again, you know, when I talked about Mick Foley's Have a Nice Day in the library tours, I'm not really huge into wrestling. It's not really something I watch very often. However, there was a time where my kids were really into it. And so, you know, I watched with them and I fell in love with this one performer. I thought he was excellent. And I found out that he was an author of a few books. And so I picked them up and I read them, and they are absolutely incredible reads. They give me such an appreciation for wrestling as a sport, as a basis for entertainment. And interesting enough, it turns out that Chris Jericho here is also a very famous musician. Chris Jericho, this is his first biography, or autobiography, because he wrote this, called A Lion's Tale. Amazing story about his life growing up and getting into the wrestling business, first couple years in the wrestling business. And the second one is Chris Jericho's Undisputed, which takes place after where Lion's Tale ends and continues on with his story. But Chris Jericho is also the lead singer of a band called Fozzy, and they're actually really good. I've listened to a few of their songs, a few of their albums, and very good music. He's the frontman, the lead singer of that band, and he has an awesome voice. So right here, Chris Jericho's A Lion's Tale and Undisputed, great biographies about both wrestling and the music industry. And what's really cool about that, he's a very talented writer, very smart man, very good with words, and piecing his story of his life together and presenting it in a very humorous way as well. For any of y'all who might be a music fan and wrestling fan, something you might want to check out. Again, that's Chris Jericho's Undisputed and A Lion's Tale. Awesome reads. You know, I talked earlier about so you want to be a rock and roll star, and that's kind of what made me want to talk more about some music biographies, because I love music biographies. For my students out there, you know I keep a guitar in the classroom, and some of you I've played for, and sometimes, you know, like I used to play out in the hallways and stuff for kids. But I love music. It's a big part of my life. When I was in high school, I was in many different bands. I got to travel and tour, and that was a lot of fun. But so that has continued my love of playing music and reading about music. And these are some of the best biographies I've actually read. Now, this first one, for my students out there, you know my favorite band is Weezer. So this one is entitled River's Edge. It is written by John D. Larson. It is a massively huge book. And it covers the story of Weezer up to, I believe it's 2003, 2002, 2003 is where it stops. I'm hoping that one day there will be a sequel to it that continues on with the Weezer stories. As we know, they're still releasing music to this day. But it is an awesome, awesome, awesome look into the lead singer Rivers Cuomo's life and how he started Weezer and the branching out into different genres of music and how they became successful. Awesome book, great read. It was a very, very fast read, actually. It's big as it is. I was surprised at how quickly I read through it. It was very interesting. So if you like Weezer as much as I do, or maybe you don't, it's still a fascinating story about how somebody grows up in kind of odd situations and has progressed to becoming a rock and roll star. Rivers grew up on a commune. I believe it was Yogaville in New York, and how his family grew from there, how he found a love for music, and how that actually translated into other areas of his life. In fact, Rivers went to Harvard and in between albums and started writing a space opera, which was kind of cool. But that's River's Edge by John D. Larson. Give it a look if you're interested. Very good read. Next, I have kind of it's one of my favorite genres of music when I was growing up and in high school was the emo music scene. I very much loved a lot of the bands in the scene and was lucky enough to see a bunch of them live over the years. This book by Andy Greenwald is called Nothing Feels Good, and it is punk rock, teenagers, and emo. What I like about this music book here is that it covers multiple artists from the emo era, the era that I love. Everything from the Promise Ring to the Get Up Kids. It even covers Weezer and Dashboard Confessional. These are some of my favorite bands growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s. Andy Greenwald does an amazing job at telling the story of these different bands and how they relate to teenagers. Some wonderful excerpts of just the teenage mind and how it connects to music. When I look back at some of my fondest memories of music, a lot of it goes back to my teenage life, and that's because while I was a teenager, I felt like a lot of these bands spoke to me. Like they were singing about my life. They knew what I was going through. And I know there's a few of y'all out there who have certain artists or bands that you listen to now that you feel the same way. So if you're interested in something like that, Andy Greenwald's Nothing Feels Good, punk rock, teenagers, and emo. Great read. And my last book for you here. Now, I've got plenty of music biographies, but these are just my favorites. This one by far is probably my absolute favorite. It is Michael Azerrad, and I had to practice his name because it's kind of interesting. Come As You Are, The Story of Nirvana. Now, this book is incredible. It follows and goes through all of Nirvana's career. It talks a lot about the things that Kurt Cobain went through leading up to his death in 1994. It talks about a little bit after his death. The book was originally published before he died and then was republished again, re-released with an extra chapter afterwards that summed up the feeling and understanding after his death. It is an absolutely phenomenal read. Michael definitely did a great job with a deep dive into the career of Nirvana, covering everything from their past. Awesome job, awesome book, very good. Come As You Are, The Story of Nirvana by Michael Azerrad. I would highly recommend that if you are just a music fan in general, because it is basically, in my opinion, the way books should be written about bands. I mean, covering everything about them. Excellent read. All right, guys, that's it for today. Hopefully you're doing well. Please let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Let me know if you're, wanting a book to be talked about. Send me any questions or private messages or anything you want. I'm here for you. I'll do anything I can to help you out and get through this quarantine time. And just know that I love you and I miss you like crazy. We're almost at spring break, so let's keep it together this one last week. And, I don't know, rock and roll. Bye, guys.